President Obama is handling all this. Well, according to a brand new Fox News poll, 56% disapprove of the president's current foreign policy. It is slightly better than what they thought last month, but far worse than how they felt about this time last year. So what does this mean for our role on the international stage? With us is Tim Miller, a former Deputy Communications Director for the Republican National Committee and Executive Director of America Rising. And Rodell Molyneux is a former aide to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Rodell and Tim, welcome. Tim, let me start with you. Is it fair to say that many Americans have lost faith in our Commander-in-Chief?
Thanks, Eric. Absolutely. I think if you look at President Obama's record in foreign policy, you see that he has not offered the American people a coherent foreign policy vision. I think a lot of Americans are feeling that the president is not sending clear signals, particularly to our allies in the Middle East, but also in Eastern Europe with the prospect of Russia and Vladimir Putin's recent aggression. And so when you combine that with the failures back at home on Obamacare implementation and securing the border, increasingly the American people are wondering what this administration is doing right.
Rodell, is that fair?
Not necessarily. I will say this. I think the public is frustrated as they see mounting world. But the president finds himself, I believe, between a rock and a hard place, between an American public that's concerned, but an American public, and the polls show this, yours included, that don't want U.S. military intervention. So, for instance, in Iraq, while they're concerned about the rise of ISIS and the march of ISIS, they don't want us to send troops back. I think the other thing the president is concerned about or has to worry about is a Congress, a Republican Congress, that cares more about scoring political partisan points than actually coming up to help him on foreign policy.
Tim, do you think they really want to score political points more than helping the president on foreign policy?
No, I don't think so, Eric. And I think that there's a big gap between what President Obama's foreign policy has been and more troops on the ground, more military intervention. So I think that's a false dichotomy that Rodell is offering. I think what the American people want is a president who's showing strength towards Putin, showing strength towards terrorists in the Middle East. And we saw an op-ed today in the Washington Post from the president of Ukraine, President Poroshenko, that said he is begging the United States to be stronger with Putin, to show who our allies are in Eastern Europe. And President Obama isn't making even those modest steps.
Well, let's take a look at what's happening in Israel and with Hamas right now. Hamas just moments ago breaking that ceasefire, and the Israelis rejected Secretary of State Kerry's plan for a ceasefire because they want to try to destroy all those tunnels. And look at the result. 56% of Americans, according to the Fox News poll, disapprove of what the president has been doing on the Israeli-Obama conflict. Rodell, how do you turn that around?
I think it takes time, and I think and just to go back to something that Tim said, the American people want a commander-in-chief. They don't want a saber-rattler-in-chief. They don't want swagger-in-chief. And every time I hear Republicans like Tim talk about, well, you need to be stronger, I ask, what exactly does that mean? If we're not going to have military
Russia
intervention,
would be sanctions.
If we're not going to, actually, we are sanctioning and will continue to sanction. But I will say this: I will say this though, that what we need to do is to get other people in that region. We need to get them involved, and I think that's what the president has been doing. We can't go this alone, and we can't be the world's policeman. And I will say this: the polls that we're talking about, they show that as well. And Tim, your own party believes that.
I think to Eric's question on Hamas, and Rodell's not talking about that, is the American people are unhappy with what this administration is doing in Israel. It's because they're undermining our allies. He sent Secretary Kerry over to Israel, and he was wagging his finger at Bibi Netanyahu instead of doing what he can to support Israel as they're getting attacked by Hamas.
Well, here's another poll. Ready for this? Vladimir Putin. He gets higher marks than President Obama on some foreign policy. The situation in Ukraine, who has the upper hand? Man, oh man, Putin 75%. Barack Obama, 14%. That's a wipeout.
Well, I can't support anybody.
Let me just finish. Should the U.S. be more involved in Ukraine? And Rodell, this speaks to your point. 61% no, we should not get more involved. So, Rodell, let me start with you finally. When you got a poll like that, showing Putin winning, yet most Americans don't want us to get involved, how do we reassert American leadership in the world? How do we become the beacon, the shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan talked about in order to have American prestige, American involvement, and have some influence in these world affairs?
I think what we need to do, and I think it comes down to diplomacy, because it's quite clear that we are not getting involved militarily. Both Republicans and Democrats agree with that. So what we need to do is we need to get our allies throughout the world to apply political pressure. When we look at what's going on in Ukraine right now, and especially with the airliner, Putin for the first time is feeling pressure, and there's a reason why. It's because he's feeling pressure not only from the United States,
he certainly
but
wasn't
from
feeling
other
pressure
people,
during the reset.
If I may, Tim, thank you very much. He's feeling pressure from the United States, but he's also feeling pressure from other people in other people around the region, and that's how you get it. You do it by You do it by working together. Probably something that Tim and the Republicans know nothing about.
It's time about pressure. We're out of time. Got a hard break. Tim and Rodell, we thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Absolutely.